The spider on the wall is ominous. Probably could have found a bull or a Taurus or something in my room. Well, I am a Taurus, so I guess it is represented. Um, eh. So, One Piece chapter 1094. So we got a couple of covers to go over first. So the cover, I think it's the cover of Shonen Jump this week, is Luffy versus Kizaru is what they're depicting on the cover, which looks pretty good. And then we go into the actual cover page for the actual chapter is actually a really good one of a bunch of the different, technically Shimosuke clan members. So, and I actually pulled this up to make sure that I could get all the names correct for who we see on the poster. So we obviously have Shimosuke Koshiro, who is, of course, Zoro's mentor. We have Kuina as well. And then we have Shimosuke Kozaburo, who is, of course, Kuina's grandfather and one of the ones that helped with founding the village. So we see them depicted there. And then off to the other, they're on one side, and then off to the other side, we have Shimosuke Yasue. So we get Yasue there. Which is very appropriate, because in the anime, the Wano battle just kind of finished up and everything, and we got some remembrances of Yasue during that. We also see Shimosuke Ushimaru there as well, along with Onimaru, who is of course the little fox who is adorable and I love. And then we also have, who else do we have here? And then we also have, there's a figure way in the background, and then there's like a dragon head, and then of course, obviously, center of the piece is Zoro, and then Zombie Ryuma are the two that we see, and they're both clearly, riling up to, slash the dragon. And side note, I am very certain that if Kuina had, lived, she definitely would have gotten up to dragon killing status, just like Zoro has. And we see the figure in the way background with the spiky hair. I'm assuming that it's supposed to be like actual Ryuma and not zombie Ryuma, who is also in the page. So I don't know. That's just my thought. I really like the cover page. I really think it's really nice, and it's a really good way of like showing off the Shimosuke clan. Obviously, we don't see, Zoro's mother or grandmother or anything like that, because we only have like sketches of them. But maybe someday we'll get a little bit more information about what they look like, possibly. But we, it's like Zoro with his family that he doesn't actually know are his family. So yeah. And then we go into the actual chapter, so we get like this slight tiny little recap of the first two panels of like what happened the previous week. So at the end of the last chapter, we had it that Atlas managed to yell out to the Pacifista, your new mission is to eradicate every last Marine on the island. And we see the command structure highlighted again, and we see, of course, that it's Vegapunk has taken over the command structure, which... Again, it's oversight on Vegapunk's part, where they should have it be that, like, so the satellites have their own level, and then it should be Vegapunk above the satellites. And then, yes, I know, as it is depicted here, that the five elders have, like, the higher authority, which is going to come up later in this chapter, which we are aware of. But the thing is that Vegapunk, considering that he probably knew by the time he was making the Seraphim that the world government are not the best people in the world, considering they'd already blown up Ohara at that point in time, simply for the fact of them having knowledge of the Ancient Kingdom and the One Piece and that type of a thing. They may not necessarily have known that the One Piece connected back to the Ancient Kingdom, but they at least knew about the Ancient Kingdom. That Vegapunk should have had an override within the Seraphim and within the Pacifista. And the problem is I don't think Vegapunk did that, and we're going to see the consequences of that, probably within the next chapter or two, for certain things. But again, it just gives the Straw Hats more stuff to fight against. So the title of the chapter is St. J. Garcia Saturn of the Five Elders, the Defense Science War God. So we kind of get to see what Saturn's made of in this, or a glimpse of what he's made of. So... Atlas has given out the order And we see all these Marines looking up from, from down in the Fabosphere, looking up, and they're like, "Oh no, it's Vegapunk. This is bad. He's got the override." And we see the pacifistas taking in the command, and then they start attacking the Marines. And they're like, "Get away from the pacifistas!" And they're all running away and everything like that. And we see them hiding and trying to get away from the pacifistas, which is fair. And then we also see some of the other Marines, probably the more higher ranking ones, possibly captains and vice admirals, looking up, or whatever is in between captains and vice admirals, looking up, and they're like, "Hey, that means that Vegapunk has left the dome. So now we can go after Vegapunk." And they're like, "Over there," and like they're pointing up at the top where they see, and they're just like, we see another speech bubble, probably from Vegapunk himself. "Atlas, quick, we have to find Bonnie." And then we have where we cut back to the Vega Tank 8. I love this thing. This thing is adorable. And we're going to get some explanation in it first for how it operates. But first we see that Atlas and Sanji are both shouting out of the top of the bubble. So the bubble around the Vega Tank is definitely permeable, because Sanji literally is like half outside of it, or like a third of his body, like his shoulders up or like outside of it. And then Atlas is in the same position where she's like screaming out, or they're shouting down to try to figure out where Bonnie is. Frankie is also in there, and of course Vegapunk is driving. So we're having this explanation where I don't know. I think it's Sanji that's asking, "How the heck are we meant to drive straight down? Wouldn't we just fall? End up falling? Because of the way that the Vega tank is designed. There's like these like the clouds around the wheels that seem to be attaching it to like these other cloud formations that are around." And Vegapunk explains, the Vega tires, because he can't name anything after him, because he has to name everything after himself. The Vega tires on either side of us are made up of some kind of sky cloud as the road, as the same type of sky cloud as the road. It has a peculiar property which makes it stick to itself. We won't fall or we won't be falling anywhere. So this is a reference back to the sky clouds with what is it that it's called? Briartine. I don't know. It's okay. It's okay. It's just the neighbors. It's okay. Okay. Okay, it's just neighbors. Okay, it's just the neighbors. I'm sorry they spooked you. It's okay. Good girl. Good baby girl. My brain. Pyrobrine, that's what it was. Thank you for giving me a moment to think about it. Pyrobrine is what the sky clouds are made of, that the sky islands are made of. So this means that Vegapunk has studied a bunch of that. We also saw that earlier, given the fact that a good chunk of the island itself is covered in the pyrobrine cloud. So this is stating, they stick together. Frankie has not experienced the pyrobrine before, but Sanji has. Sanji's not really paying attention to that like that. He's on Bonnie, must find Bonnie, And he sees her, and he's like, "For real?" And Frankie's like, "For real?" And Sanji's like, "Yeah, when has my lady radar ever been wrong?" And this is again called back to Sanji's, radar that he has for finding women. And Vegapunk's like, "That radar doesn't sound very scientific, but I'll have some faith in you." Thank you, Vegapunk. Thank you, Vegapunk. Now that doesn't sound scientific, but okay, whatever. And so we look down, we see that they're still, going up and down, going down the clouds and everything like that. So what is it that he says? It's Sanji that says, "Appreciate it, but this tank is too slow for my burning heart. I'll be right back." So he jumps out of the Vega tank and starts, jumping down, skywalking down, blue walking down, and everything toward where Bonnie is. We cut down to where Bonnie is, and she is being attacked by a bunch of Marines and everything like that. And someone's shouting, "Where did that scamp get to?" And she's thinking, "Good, it sounds like the pacifistas are back on our side." And then we see Bonnie gets attacked by it's one of the, I think it's one of the new vice admirals, but I don't think we've gotten his name yet. And it looks like his weapon looks like a giant clamshell on top of a broom. Is kind of what it looks like, but I'm sure that's not what it's supposed to be. Hi. Bonnie grabs the gun that's either on her hip or that she found on the ground. There's Marines falling all over the place, so she could probably find a pistol of some kind. She picks up the pistol and she fires it at these 3 lower ranked Marines. Probably, definitely less than captain, considering how quickly this affects them. And she calls it an NDE attack, and this is short for near-death experience. And something seems to hit them. I think it's possibly like a bubble gun, or it's like something else that is not, it's not shooting any type of like a lethal round or anything like that, because Bonnie's intention is not to kill these Marines. Her intention is to incapacitate them. I'm sure there's lots of Marines that Bonnie would like to see killed. We're going to see that later on, and I'm sure Akainu is one of them. But she shoots them, and it seems to, like, some type of gloop seems to hit their head, and the Marine, like, gloop hits his head. He's like, huh? And then he goes, ah! And he, like, pictures himself as a skeleton, and then he just, like, cries, and then he, like, faints. So this is literally giving you, like, this near-death experience. And it's supposed to make you faint. And so it's like this is happening to several of these Marines and everything like that. So it's another variation of her, power, of what she can do with her power, which we still don't have the name of her devil fruit yet, which we'll find out hopefully at some point soon. Given how the chapter ends, having it be revealed at the beginning of the next chapter with like a really cool panel of Bonnie would be a really good way of doing it, but I don't know. Then again, this may also be one of the situations where Oda has completely forgot that he has not told us the name of her devil fruit yet. And he'll like retcon that and be like, oh, I thought I said that already. Oh, here's the name of the devil fruit. But I doubt that. But so those Marines pass out, and the one guy that's the vice admiral is like looking at them going like, what did you do? And get, it's like if you have a near-death experience, you're most likely going to pass out, which is what happens to them. And one of them is just like, I saw the river Styx, or it's the Senyu's River, or some variation of it, for the equivalency of like the river that you go across to go to the underworld. Different mythologies have different rivers. In Greek and Roman, it's the river Styx, and then I guess in Japanese Buddhist, the equivalent is the Sansu River. So Bonnie is now running away, and she runs toward one of the pacifistas, and it says, I won't let you pass. And she's like, okay, this is not right, but like, how is? And then we see that it's the old female vice admiral that we saw earlier, and we find out that her name is Navy HQ Vice Admiral Bluegrass. So Q banjos, I guess. And she goes, don't panic, dearie. It's only this one. It's only this one unit that hasn't been affected by the new orders. I made it my personal ride. I'm a driver woman who can hijack anything thanks to the ride fruit, or I think it's referred to as the nori fruit. So I guess that's an interesting way of having a devil fruit. I mean, like, if it applies to, the pacifistas, does that mean it also applies to, like, we saw Kujaku manipulate buildings and stuff like that by whipping them, so this would be like one specific object that you were riding. I don't know if this means specifically just technically inanimate objects as in something that does not have like a mind of its own, or could she manipulate like a sea king, which would be very, very useful if you're a vice admiral and you have a devil fruit and you fall in the water and you find a sea king, and the sea king can like ride you can ride the sea king back to the surface and it will save you. That would be one way of doing it. But the pacifista is now under her control, and she goes, I take it often you will lift the age curse on my ickle subordinates. Her little subordinates that are all being affected by Bonnie's power. And Kuma, the pacifista, is, powering up the laser. And Bonnie is just like, Daddy? Is like what's going through her head. And Bluegrass is like, give them back their lost years, and the beam fires. And thankfully, we see that Sanji shows up just in time to, pull Bonnie out of the way. And they're both safe. And he goes, Bonnie, you can't let yourself freeze up like that. And she's like, Black Lake? She's like, and he's like, they told me about Kuma being your dad. I get it, but you've got to keep a cool head. And then we see the other vice admiral show up, tries attacking them, and it's I've seen different variations of this translation, and he's like trying to whack them, and it's like he's trying to play whack-a-mole, but it's like whack-an-otter. It's like I was never very good at whack-a-mole. And Sanji is now carrying Bonnie kind of, bridal style and everything, which I'm sure Sanji loves. But he's a little bit focused on getting them out of there at the moment, or at least not getting Sanji with the hard eyes at the moment, which is a good thing. And he goes like, for now, let's just get out of here. And he's running, and they get to the Vegapunk, and Vegapunk is like, Bonnie, Sanji-kun, hop on. And one of the other admirals is noticing Vegapunk, and they're like, okay, let's head back. The pacifistas are already on our side again. We don't have any business left down here. So they've got Bonnie. Sanji's getting back in the Vegapunk. Frankie is still in the Vegapunk. We got back up to the Labosphere, where, just like at the beginning of the chapter, at the beginning of the manga, where we see Kizaru and Luffy fighting, we see them fighting again back up in the Labosphere. Luffy seems to have gone, in one of the panels, it looks like he turned into like the shape of like the monkeys in a barrel shape is what Luffy looks like he turned into, which is kind of funny. And Kizaru is just like, I'm afraid I've got a job to do, and I can't finish it if we keep playing around. And Kizaru is panting, so he's at least being somewhat affected by Luffy's attacks and by the fight. Which is good, but still not as good as we would like. And Luffy's like, that's the idea. I'm doing my job. It's like, my job right now is to keep you distracted. It's like, we need to get Bonnie, and we need to get the Sunny ready to go. And we need to get everybody on the Sunny before we... Luffy is not saying all of this out loud, but he's like, well, it's my job right now to keep you distracted and occupied so Vegapunk doesn't get killed and so you don't hurt my friends. So Luffy knows where his priorities lie at this point in time. And Kizaru just decides, well, this is a problem. And he like zips off. And Luffy is like, hey, get back here. And he's, the running really, really fast thing. And then we see a moment where Kizaru, Luffy, Zoro, and Lucci all have this moment where they're like, huh? What the? Where they all sense something that is a very big power thing, or a very big force that is about to come to the island, or is arriving on the island. And we see that, and we see Jinbei also sense it, and he says like, what is this ominous presence? So these ones are all very clearly Haki users. All of them have very good observation Haki. Luffy's future sight didn't warn him about this. And Sanji, he is pretty occupied with like getting Bonnie and everything like at this point in time. So I don't know if his observation Haki would have gone off for this, but probably considering the size of the threat that it's going to be, it did. And then so we also see Nami, Usopp, and Chopper along with Stussy. And Stussy seems to be on like a little type of a medical table. And Chopper, Usopp, and Nami are looking like they're trying to get her somewhere. Or at the very least, I assume it's supposed to be Stussy. It doesn't have the nose like Kaku, and it's not in a bubble. I still running gag right now. So Kaku is just over in the corner right now of like the Vegapunk Labosphere, just like, I'm still in the bubble. Will someone please help me? Anybody? So Kaku is still in the bubble, probably. We don't see him at all this chapter again. But they seem to be trying to get Stussy to somewhere where she can get medical attention, and then probably get her ready to get on the Sunny, because hopefully they'll take Stussy with them if they can. Or she'll stay behind as a distraction if they get her better enough. Also, we know that somewhere within the Labosphere were the organoids, so it's like if they have those, then they might be able to use those to help treat Stussy. Then we cut to where we see a bunch of the other vice admirals. So we see Doll And then one of the other ones that kind of, has like the oars type teeth and stuff like that, and a top hat type thing. And they're just like, oh no, don't tell me this is not good, because they sense what's coming too. Because pretty much once you're at the level of vice admiral, you should probably have at least observation and armament hockey to a pretty good level. Particularly if you're punching battleships, like, battleship bags like Garp and everything. So then we see shadowy eyes and we hear pacifista units, cease all action immediately. Seems to, call out over the island. All the pacifistas are stopping. And we cut to, we see the Vega tank, and they're just like, oh, how strange. The pacifista aren't trying to protect us anymore. Hey, did you forget your orders? And they're like, but the only people with higher authority clearance than us are the 5 elders. And again, this is where Vegapunk should have had some type of contingency plan when it comes to the giant, powerful robots that he makes. Cyborgs, robots, androids, whatever you want to call them. He needs to have a type of contingency plan with them. Unless we find out he has a contingency plan with him very, very soon, things are not going to go well, particularly if the Seraphim are found. So Atlas is like, oh, that the only ones that are above us in the command structure are the 5 elders, which is like not a good sign. And then we see a bunch of these Marines, and this like giant circle with a star that basically looks like a giant version of like a pentagram appears on the ground. And it's a star, and then like there's like 5s all around it. And they're like, a magic circle? What is this? And they're like, this is most peculiar. We must hurry. And I think it's Vegapunk that says that. It's like something is coming, and like they're trying to get up the Sky Cloud Road as quickly as they can. And there's an announcement that comes from the battleships that is like, all Marines on the island, be advised, Saint Saturn of the 5 Elders is about to make landfall on Egghead. Huh? One of the 5 Elders is here? It was like just everybody's freaking out here. Any Marine below the rank of Commodore is hereby ordered to avert their gaze. Transgressions will not be forgiven. And we see, as the Vega tank is going up the road, we see this giant thing that looks kind of like a combination of like black fire and lightning. Admittedly, once the colors are drawn in the anime, it'll probably be like actual fire colors or some other type of color. Seems to be appearing over where the giant circle was. And they're like, what was that explosion? That announcement mentioned the 5 elders. One of them actually came all the way here. And they're like, 5 elders? I don't know if it's Frankie or Sanji that says that. Sanji would probably know about the 5 elders, given his, Germa heritage and everything. He would probably know about the 5 elders. Long-running joke. And his uncle is one of them. He's not. And Vegapunk is like, they're the most powerful authority figures in the world. And Frankie's like, what? And Vegapunk is like, it doesn't matter. We're getting out of here now. We're getting out of here. Hang on. And they're like, the circle itself is glowing and like letting off like the fire or whatever, magic smoke stuff, whatever. And there's like something coming out of the circle, and Sanji is like, that circle, something's coming out of it. And then we cut down where we get the actual reveal, and we see that one of the Marines is looking, and it's like, what the hell is that? Is he some kind of monster? And they're like, quit, you're not meant to see him. He might just... And then we see like the close-up of like you can tell that it's supposed to be St. J. Garcia Saturn's face looks, and then the one Marine that was looking, his head is just gone. It's just gone. Like Dr. Manhattan from Watchmen, gone. And then we get the full reveal of Saturn, and he does have the horns, like what we saw in his transformation, in the silhouette of his transformation, but he also has like 8 legs, probably like 6 legs technically, considering that it is a spider type thing that he turned into. And we see that he's gained claws, and his beard has like his beard and hair, his dreadlocks and stuff is like very much more puffed out and everything. And he has the thing that Luffy has. It's like the smoke scarf thing around him that is a representation of like a type of deity type of thing. Like Luffy had this, Yamato had this, Kaido had this. It's a similar thing that seems to be happening with like the mythical zones that we've seen. And Saturn's like, I almost can't remember the last time I came to the surface. And then we get the Oda box of highest authority of the world government, 5 elder planets, defense science, warrior, god, St. J. Garcia Saturn, which is not much different than what we got when we first got his introduction box, and then again later on when we got him introduced with the rest of the 5 elders. But he's shown up, and he's got like 6 legs that look like spider legs, and he's got the horns, and he's got claws. And Bonnie is like looking down at that like, what is that thing? Yeah, that would be my answer too. What the hell is that thing? I will get to what he is in a few minutes after I finish getting through the chapter. And they're like, and Sanji's like, up top, look up. And the road has been hit by what appears to be a laser from, I think it's revealed to be Kizaru. Yeah, it's Kizaru that like hit the road with the laser. Hit the road, Kizaru. I couldn't resist. And he's like, oops, almost had them. And then Luffy shows up. He grabs Kizaru, or he's like, Luffy's like, the muscle thing that he did before, like rearing his arm back and getting it ready to go. And he's like, hold it, Kizaru. And Kizaru's like, geez, haven't you reached your limit with that form yet? And Frankie is like, we're counting on you, Luffy. Or it's like, Luffy, we need your help, or like some variation of that. And Kizaru tries to fire again at Luffy. Luffy manages to dodge. He like whirls himself up, and then he, like, his giant muscled arm is, hockey coated and, gear 5th enhanced, and it whacks into Kizaru. And it's very similar to where he managed to punch into Kaido's head and actually like, bend Kaido's head with the punch. And he, it's the Gamu Gamu no White Star Gun, which I'm trying to remember my astronomy correctly. And I'm trying to remember, a red star is when the star is getting ready to die, if I remember correctly. And a white star is a star that is like a newly born star before it's fully developed into like the type of star it will be, if I remember correctly. So it's like, I think it's supposed to be a reference to that. And he, whacks Kizaru, and like we see little stars pop up and stuff. So we get that Kizaru, we see Kizaru's face, and it's like Luffy's punch is like through his head. Very similar to Kaido, as I said, and he's like, oh, this isn't good. As what's going through Kizaru's head. And then Luffy's like, no, I'm really at my limit. And this is where he starts to deflate, and he's, falling, all the wrinkles and everything that happens. And they're like, concerned about that. And Saturn's like looking up going, Nika. Because he, of course, actually knows what the devil fruit actually is. Luffy, falls down, lands in the Fabosphere, or the fabrication spear, like pretty very, very close to Saturn. And we see that, yes, he has like 6 legs, and I do admit the form is cool, and I will get to what the form is in a moment. I was going to do that at the end of the chapter because I have a little bit of a thing that I looked up for it. Plus, we're almost finished anyway. And so they land, the Vega tank ends up crashing, falling and crashing, and they all fall out. And then we see Saturn is looking down at them. And he is like huge. So he looked to be like about the size of a normal human being when he was Saturn. So the giant size of this must come from the power. And I'm assuming it's a devil fruit, but at the moment we're most likely going to assume that it's a devil fruit. So the Vega tank is out of commission at this point in time. Frankie is checking on Vegapunk. Sanji checks on Atlas to make sure that he's okay or she's okay. And then Sanji is also holding Bonnie. And Saturn, or Vegapunk is like identifying that it is, Saint Saturn, I assume. And he's like, in the flesh, I see you have managed to cling on to life, Vegapunk. And then Bonnie, starts to have this, I'm assuming it's a flashback of some kind. It could be a reminiscent back to something she saw in the memory paw bubble from her father. It could be a reference to that. And we might get a bit more of an explanation. Given how this chapter ends, it would make perfect sense to go into a Bonnie and Kuma flashback to reveal like what we saw in the egg and in the egg, what we saw in the memory bubble, or what Bonnie saw in the memory bubble, given how this chapter ends, but we'll see. But what happens is Bonnie is hearing that's like, I have given the order, Vegapunk. And she grabs a sword that's just randomly laying on the ground. Again, there's like fallen marine stuff all over them from getting attacked by the pacifistas and getting attacked by, you know, blah, 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 Bonnie, everything. So she grabs this sword and she jumps into the air. And we get this other thing, you know, it's just like, erase his individuality completely. Make sure no trace of him remains. But if we, and then it's another voice, but if we do that, Kuma, and Bonnie jumps and stabs Saturn through the beard into his chest. She draws blood. Bonnie is now the first canonical character, as far as we are aware, to draw blood from a Gorosei, and I am so happy that it's Bonnie. She stabs him into the chest. We see that she is crying. And I don't know if she's the one that shouts Saint Saturn or if it's someone else that shouts at him. But she stabs him, and then like the little caption is like, pierced by her fury. Saturn, I don't know if Saturn expected that to happen or not, or his observation hockey was not on, or if he did have armament hockey going, she managed to pierce through it, which shows you something for her determination. And there's no break next week, so we get another chapter next week. So I really like that Bonnie is the first one to canonically attack and injure a Gorosei. I love that. I'm so happy about that, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of other people that are happy about that too. So I really like that. I'm hoping that the thing with the memory, that it's like I'm assuming it's going to be that Bonnie, that what she just heard, like the little bits of voice that we saw her hearing, were probably something of like hearing St. J. Garcia Saturn's voice triggered something from what had happened in the memory bubble, or some other like long forgotten memory that she had. And I think that a really good place for next week to pick up would be her having stabbed Vegapunk. Or not stabbed Vegapunk. No. Her having stabbed Saturn. Sorry, her having stabbed Saturn and drawn blood. I mean, it might end up being similar to like how the scabbards drew blood against Kaido, where it's just like, okay, you managed to draw a bit of blood. It's like all that for a drop of blood if we're gonna go the Thanos route with it. But I don't, you know, it's probably not going to be too much of a thing in the long run, but it's like, it's still a thing where it's like, she's the one that managed to do it. Kind of like how the scabbards were able to draw blood on Kaido, you know, when they fought him and everything. But what ends up happening, you know, what I would like to see is, we go from, we get the thing where we get maybe a double page spread or something where we have Bonnie stabbing him. And then it goes into this explanation as to what the voices meant, and where she's like, okay, we get some of the flashback from the memory bubble where it's like her watching it, or even just like mixed with her own memories. And her, and we get this explanation as to what had happened. And if during that time frame they finally reveal what the devil fruit is that she has, because maybe we see her eat the devil fruit in the flashback or something along those lines, then that would be a very good way of doing it. But in regards to the Gorosei having power, so a lot of people are pointing this out, and this is not a monster that I was particularly familiar with, or a creature, I should say, that I was particularly familiar with. So it seems to be referencing an Ushi-Oni, or an Ox-Oni, or an Ox Demon, or a Gyuki, or it's a type of yokai that is from Japanese folklore in Western Japan. And it's described as this kind of bovine-headed monster that has spider-like appearance, and the fact that the body seems to be very spider-like, and then the head seems to be that of an ox or a bovine or some type of a thing like that. And it lives on the coastal areas, and it will, trick people into coming into the water, and then it will drown them and eat them, or whatever variation. And it will attack people who walk on beaches. So I'm like, okay. I was not familiar with this thing. There's a lot of Japanese yokai that I am not familiar with. Also, it's a giant freaking spider thing, so why would I want anything to do with it? Because I don't like spiders. So I was looking up to see what other references there were for it. There is another reference in this in One Piece. Zoro has an attack that is the attack that he actually uses to defeat T-Bone way back, between Water 7 and Enies Lobby, where he uses against T-Bone. And then there is apparently a Yu-Gi-Oh card, which I do remember this card, that's like Ushi-Oni is what it's called. It's just literally what it's called, and it's like a bowl with weird spider legs coming out of what looks like a pot of some kind, if I remember correctly, or a jar of some kind. I think it was at least like 2,000 attack. I don't remember if I even had this card. But I remember the card. And then there's another one that I wanted to point out. There's a couple others that I wanted to point out. But the other one that I wanted to point out first is these things pop up as like bosses in different types of video games occasionally. And there's one that's called like Neo 2 is the name of the game. I am not familiar with it, but I looked it up. And there is this, the enormous version of this yokai there that you have to fight, that is the spider in the head of a bull. And, so we have that. And then the other two that I wanted to point out is so in the previous arc in Wano, we got Black Maria, who had, the Ushi-No-Mi model Rosa Magellia, Gravagelli, or whatever it was called. It was the spider zone that she had. It was like the ancient spider zone that she had manipulated with science and everything. So she could still look pretty on top and have the spider on the bottom. If this is that the Gorosei are a type of devil fruit user, or at the very least this one is, if Saturn is at the very least a devil fruit type user, then this would most likely be the Ushi mythical zone model Ushi-Oni, is most likely what that would be. Unless there's like a subclass of like spider ones, but I don't think there was. And then because it's a mythical zone, not only would it have, like the physical form of the spider that it would take of this beast, because we saw like the horns and everything, it would also be have some type of power or like an elemental thing connected with it. And while Black Maria was only an ancient zone, she still very much managed to use her webbing and everything like that to a very, very good degree. And if Saturn is in a similar situation where he may have similar abilities to what Black Maria can do, minus the fact that he's not like a giant sexy spider lady, then, there's that. And we'll see if that is something that he is capable of, or if it is revealed that while the Gorosei may appear to have devil fruit powers in this regard, their powers might be something even beyond devil fruits, as in they might actually be something that was gifted to them from Eem, which is also a possibility, and I'm sure a lot of other people are going to point that out. But the other two ones that I wanted to point out that are Ushi-Oni references, and again, neither of these are anything that I'm familiar with. The only ones on this list that were like Ushi-Oni and other things that I was vaguely familiar with is the Yu-Gi-Oh card. Considering a lot of these other ones are ones that I had not hadn't heard of. So the other two that I wanted to point out is in the Fate Grand Order games, shows, whatever you want to call them. There is an Ushi-Oni there, who is a very sexy female version of an Ushi-Oni, as is definitely going to happen. And then there is also in the Tohu project, again, I don't know what it is, there is another Ushi-Oni there that is Yurumi Ushizaki. And she's a cute little Ushi-Oni girl cow thing that will turn into like the spider thing with legs. And they're both adorable. And I'm like, of course there's sexy female versions of these things, because there are sexy female versions of any type of monster or yokai that can be thought of. Because Japan and just stuff in general. But I wanted to point those out. I don't think there was too much else there I wanted to point out. Yeah, I do hope that the next chapter starts with something with Bonnie, or at the very least, once we get to the stuff with Bonnie, or it could be like a transition into the next chapter where, you know, the end of the chapter that we might get next week will be, you know, cut back to this where Bonnie has managed to stab Saturn. And because we may cut away to somewhere else in the lab and see something else, because it looked like Usopp and Nami were trying to get Bonnie healed up with Chopper's help. Frankie, Sanji and Frankie and Luffy's kind of down for the count at the moment, unfortunately. Lilith needs to be working on getting the Sunny ready so they can go. And Jinbei might be with Lilith now, and she might be able to be like an explanation as to what's going on. But nobody seems to be paying attention to the monitors at the moment, unless Edison is still paying attention to the monitor, and Kaku is sitting in the corner in the bubble. And Kaku asks what's going on, which is a possibility. Also, we don't know where Robin is. Robin might be in the same room with... Actually, hold on. I'm going to roll back and check something here. So, the one that we see that is Nami and Usopp, that seems to be on the thing. Okay, that has blonde hair clearly. So that cannot be Robin. That has to be Stussy. That is on the medical table. And Stussy seemed to have gotten hurt a lot more than Robin did. Hopefully Robin will be up and going soon. She beat the last spider person. Also, Brooke and Robin might still be in the control room with Edison at the moment. While Nami and Usopp are helping Chopper with Stussy. But what they could do is, cut around the lab and show us some of that stuff, and then have it be that we cut back to where we see Bonnie, having stabbed Saturn, and then we cut into where we get like this flashback with Bonnie and explanation of some of the stuff that happened in the memory bubble. And we might just get a whole chapter that's a flashback in that regard. And we, reveal of like Bonnie meeting Kuma, because if she is his biological daughter, then that's fine. If she's adopted, then that's fine too. Either way, One Piece is about, different types of family, and those are both families that Oda has highlighted at various points in time throughout the course of the series, adopted and blood families as well. And maybe we'll see something of Bonnie eating her devil fruit or something along those lines, or get some other variation. I know there's this whole theory that the current Bonnie is actually a clone of the original Bonnie, and something variation along that lines. I'm like, okay. Doesn't change the fact that Kuma is her father, and that she sees him as a father, and that he sees her as his daughter. That does not change. It just means that she's a clone, because maybe the original Bonnie died and he asked Vegapunk to make him a clone because he couldn't lose his own daughter again, or something like that. So I don't know. I don't know if this is a thought. I know that there's a thought tossed out that she was like a clone of Big Mom at some point in time, and I'm like, I don't know, maybe that's a possibility, I guess. I don't know. But now that Saturn's here, the pacifistas seem to be under his control, and if he finds the Seraphim and he's able to free them from their bubbles, then they would be under his control as well. The Hancock one, the S-Snake, is a little bit of an iffy one, considering she did seem to respond to Luffy. And, agreed to help him. But I don't know if that would be... I don't think that's something that could be played with the S-Shark and the S-Hawk and the S-Bear, unless there's something in S-Bear that's programmed to, like, Bonnie is the override end-all be-all for any commands that will be given to S-Bear. And if that was there, then that would make sense. That's something I don't know. I don't know if the Seraphim are able to lie or not. Because if anything, it's like the Seraphim could lie to someone and be like, S-Bear, if he is able to lie, which is a possibility, It could be like, hey, let me out of this bubble. I need to go save Bonnie, or I need to go save Vegapunk from, Saturn. And then he shows up and then he ends up falling under Saturn's control. Or a good way of also depicting that would be the S Bear shows up, or like someone released S Bear. We still don't know if Katarina and Lafitte are running around the island or not. But if Bonnie is clearly in danger again. And if S Bear becomes aware of this, also we know that there's possibly having Kuma, actual Kuma, on his way, since he blipped away from Marie Joie, yesterday. We'll see how that goes. We'll see if he's able to arrive here with enough time to cause problems. If anything, it would be exceedingly funny to see him show up, blip, and then blip Saturn out of there like nobody's paying attention, and he walks up to Saturn and he like blips Saturn away, and Saturn like flies for 3 days, and then he like lands somewhere like in Marie Joie or something like that, and it's just like, this is not what I had planned. Darn it. That would be funny as a way of doing it, but I don't know. But hopefully we'll get some Bonnie and Kuma flashbacks soon to get a little bit more of that. But that's what I had here. I thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. And we have Brenda in the background. So, bye.